I'm excited to get to teach this. This is I probably say this every time I teach this class, but of all the classes I teach, this is one of my favorite ones to teach because I feel like it is the one that will make the biggest impact in your business if you'll do what I teach you about. So anyway, we're going to jump into that. So here's the idea of this. We're going to go through and talk about how to work your sphere of influence. And the approach that I have to taking this is different than, at least I've never seen anybody take this same type of an approach with working your sphere of influence. And what I mean by that is most people will approach it as a people problem, meaning like they'll approach it as to how to work the people, which yes, we're going to talk about that. But what I mean by that is that typically, if you'll approach it as more of a math problem, see, the working of your sphere of influence is really a math problem. It's not a people problem. And so that's what we're going to talk about is the math on that. Now, if you don't like math, don't worry, because it's not really like that crazy of math. Although I am going to do one thing that you're going to be like, that makes zero sense. But then when I explain it, it makes sense. So we're not going to get into it crazy deep math or anything. So don't worry that way. But we are going to talk about how to manage it and work it as a math problem, because it will 100% guaranteed to work. Like that's the one thing of everything that I teach, all the classes that I teach, this is the one that I will say is 100% guaranteed to work if you'll follow it. And so I'm going to give you 4 protocols today is what we're going to go through and talk about these 4 protocols. Now, the reason I call them a protocol instead of a rule is when you hear protocol, what do you think of?
Normal way.
Okay, good. A system, a what?
Normal way.
A normal way. Okay, good.
Business.
Good. Any other thoughts?
Almost like a kind of an emergency. Just urgently, this needs to happen. This needs to happen.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the reason I like to say it as a protocol is because it's a required condition. So I don't say it as I'm going to give you 4 rules or 4 things to do. I say it as 4 protocols. And the reason is because if you don't do the 4 things, then I can't guarantee you it'll work. But if you do the 4 things, it is guaranteed to work, these 4 protocols. Okay, so we're going to get into that. But before that, I first want to run through just quickly. We're going to talk about a couple of other things really fast. The first one is that we're going to talk about is a client. And I want to just make sure that you guys understand these 3 different areas, because really in terms of you and real estate, there's only really 3 different groups of people you're going to work with. Now there's a 4th, but you don't work with them because that's called we drop them. We aren't going to work with them. So there's really only 3 groups of people you're going to work with. And I want to identify just quickly the other 2, because then the 3rd one is your sphere of influence. The first one is our clients. Now, in terms of a client, what makes somebody a client?
Utilizing your professional services.
Okay, good. So that's the first thing. So I'm going to write it up here as you. Now, if you're going to take notes on it, here's what I would write is that they're committed to working exclusively with you. So the first thing that makes someone a client is that they are committed to working exclusively with you. So they're committed to working exclusively with you. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to give you actually 4 things to use in terms of managing a client too. But in terms of these client management things, keep in mind that what we're going to talk about here is not the way that the division of real estate would define a client. They would define the client as basically if you get an agency agreement signed with them, then they're your client, right? Well, I'm going to do it a little differently because I'm saying it. How do you know if you're going to get paid from this person is basically the way I'm looking at it. So the first one is they have to be committed to working exclusively with you. What else would they have to have, be, or do?
Sign an agreement.
Okay, so I'm going to include that with this. So because here's why. The thing is they have to be committed to working exclusively with you, which doesn't necessarily mean they've signed an agreement, but we would want them to for sure. So I'm going to put that as part of the
How
working.
about actively engaged in the process of working with you?
Okay, good. Here's how I'm going to call that. is I'm going to write it down here as need. Here's how I would tell you to write it down. Is that they have clear and present needs that can be met. So a client has to have clear and present needs that can be met. So clear and present needs that can be met. Now, let me define that for you even a little further. That means they can qualify or they have the cash to do it. It's they're in a position. So that's the it can be met, meaning they could do it. Okay. The clear and present needs is if it's a buyer, they know what they want, and then it's realistic. So that would be included as well. So when I say need, they have to have clear and present needs that can be met. But in addition to that, what it means is they can qualify. What they're looking for is realistic. If it's a seller, that they're going to list for a realistic price. When an offer comes in that meets what they're looking for, they'll do it. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, good. The next two get a little bit harder. Number 3. Any ideas? Or should I
Finish the deal.
Okay, good. You're on the right track. I'm gonna say it as now. They're committed to buying or selling. So depending on buyer or seller, they're committed to buying or selling now. Now define now for me.
They're actively in your car, or they have a sign in their yard.
Okay, good. Yeah, so here's what it means to me. Now just means, doesn't have to be tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, but it means if it's a seller and I've got my sign in the front of their house, if an offer comes in that meets their needs, they're not going to go, oh, hold on, wait a minute. Now that we know we got that, let's see if we can get more. We're going to wait a little while or whatever. Same thing with a buyer. If they have these clear and present needs that can be met, and it's a buyer and I go out and show them a house and it meets those needs, that they're not going to say, okay, well, now we just got to wait for our kid to graduate from high school or something like that. So now doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, but it means when an offer comes in on your property, you're going to accept it, as long as it's within reason. And on a buyer, when we go out and we look at a property and we find one that meets your needs, you're going to write the offer. That's what now means. Okay. And then number 4 is really more about the management of a client. Now, sometimes what I'll do, I didn't do it today, but sometimes at the start of this, I'll write up your client and then I'll say how many, but I'll have people hold up on their hands. How many clients do you have right now? And then they'll hold up however many fingers of clients. And then I say, okay, now let's go through this and let's figure out if you really have a client. And once we go through, they're committed to working exclusively with you. Most of the time, the number of fingers that people hold up stays the same. Then when I get to clear and present needs that can be met, usually you lose a few. They're committed to buying now, usually lose a few more number of fingers being held up. Where most people will end up then losing it is on this last one. This last one is what has to happen for you to have a client is they have to be what I call tethered. What does the word tethered mean?
Attached.
Okay, good. Or tied to. That's how I like to think about it. It's attached or tied to. Now, sometimes people will say, oh, well, then that must be the buyer broker. No, buyer broker or the listing agreement is up here. They've signed a contract with you. The tethered is more about how you keep the client. And so here's how we tether a client to us is through an appointment. Okay, we tether our clients to us with appointments. And one of the things that I will tell you is that as long as you have a client, you should always have an appointment scheduled with them. If you will consistently have an appointment scheduled with a client. Now, again, I'm defining the client as somebody who has clear and present needs that can be met. They're committed to working exclusively with you and they're ready to go now. We should always have an appointment scheduled with that client. You should never leave an appointment with a client without scheduling the next appointment for something, anything. So if it's a listing and I go out and list the property, before I leave, I should set up an appointment that is 3 to 4 weeks out. And basically what I'm saying to this seller is, hey, hopefully we're meeting before this. But in the event we have not received an offer by whatever date, 3 to 4 weeks out, I want to get back together, talk about what's happened in the market, and then we're going to figure out what we need to do to help you get your home sold. That's the idea of this. You should never leave an appointment with a client without scheduling the next appointment. Now, I am on the professional standards for UAR. I have been on professional standards for the Salt Lake Board, and I've been on grievance committee, or currently actually even on grievance committee again at the Salt Lake Board. Anytime that I have dealt with issues that where either a consumer has complained about their agent or an agent has complained about another agent, but typically more so the client complaining about the agent, almost every single time I can tie it back to, if they would have done this, they probably would not have ended up having an issue with their.
And actually, I can see it makes them feel engaged with like that you're doing your part now to move them down.
Yeah.
And going.
Perfect. Yeah.
But I've also lost clients because I didn't do that. I just kind of left an appointment and we didn't find something and, I was looking still. And then I got, I go to reach back out next week and they went and looked and they found a house.
They found
another agent.
Yeah. Yep.
It's happening. And I got all the other stuff in line.
Yeah. That's that.
And they just thought they were they were just being busy.
Yep. Doing what they do. So now let me tell you where it came from for me, where I learned this actually was I had gotten the opportunity to list 2 properties that were both in South Jordan. But the owner, they were investment properties. The owner lived just off Walker Lane. So he lived up Walker Lane. And I went into the listing appointment for this. And I'll be honest, like I was intimidated just because I knew I was driving up onto Walker Lane to go meet with this guy. And I was like, and I was still somewhat of I wasn't a new agent, but I was new enough. And I went and met with this guy. I listed both of the properties. And after we got done listing the properties, the guy says to me, now look, I know how this works. Don't call me until you get an offer. And I said, okay. Now, here's the interesting thing. I knew they were both overpriced when I listed them. But I was like, okay, like he knows how it works. So I guess I'm good. So I leave. 2 months go by. Haven't called the guy at all because we've had no showings. And he told me, don't call until you get an offer. So I didn't call. 2 months go by, I get a phone call from him. I went out of my listing and he was mad and yelling at me. And I was like, wait, why? And he says, you haven't called me one time. And I said, well, you told me not to call you until I got an offer and we hadn't gotten an offer yet. So I didn't call. And he said, well, all you had to do is say you're overpriced. And I would have adjusted, like looking back on it, when I listed the property, if I would have just said, these are never going to sell at this price, just so you know. So in the event, I'm good with don't call you till I get an offer, but what if we don't? How should I handle it? And, or even better, have just said, okay, but I want to schedule an appointment for a month from now for us to sit back down and talk about what's gone on or whatever. Anyway, after that was when I decided this is what needs to have happen is don't leave an appointment without scheduling the next appointment. And part of that too is it keeps the client, even if their house isn't selling, they know.
Keeps them informed.
Yeah, they know, hey, well, we're going to be meeting again in a couple of weeks. So, I can talk to them about it then or whatever. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on these? Okay.
But I think in addition to that, it also keeps that momentum going forward,
Yes.
right? Whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, it's that momentum that it's, even if it's a tentative date and a tentative time.
Yes.
You still have that deadline that you need to get all this done or,
Yep. And that's what I would say with the sellers. That's where I'm saying is in the event we haven't met before this, we're going to do it then. So, yeah. And the idea then is to keep the whole process.
Too. It avoids you walking away as an order taker. Like it maintains a position of you're the leader with the bill.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, Aaron.
Did you go over that person again?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I ended up canceling the list. I mean, I knew I had screwed up. And so at
It's
that
like when
point.
your wife tells you you can do something and she doesn't mean it.
Exactly. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hey,
Right.
Russ,
All right,
Hey.
next, so that's the client side. So the next group that we're going to talk about, and we're going to spend even less time on this one, but it's prospects. Okay, so think about prospects this way. So I've given you 4 criteria that makes somebody a client. We're going to talk about 4 criteria on the SOI side, but in the prospect side, a prospect is deficient in one or more of these. Okay, so think of it as a prospect is someone who is deficient in one or more of these. Now, remember I said sometimes at the start of the class, I'll say, hold up the number of fingers to clients you have. Well, and I said that as we go through and talk about these, people end up going, well, yeah, I don't have an appointment scheduled with that person. Well, then in my book, I'm saying you don't have a client. Now, again, I always want to clarify this, so that if the division ever comes back, and especially now that I'm the principal broker, I don't want anybody being like, hey, our principal broker said. So I'm clarifying, and it's being recorded, so I have proof, but is just because I'm saying based on this, they're not a client. If you've signed a buyer broker with them from the division standpoint, they're still a client, okay? But in terms of, for me thinking of this, if you don't have an appointment with the person, you don't have a client. What you have is a prospect still, okay? Now, in terms of the prospect, so they're deficient in one or more of these. So meaning, let's say that I have somebody who has clear and present needs that can be met. They're ready to go now, but they're not committed to working exclusively with me. I'm saying that's not a client. You're still prospecting them. If I get somebody who is committed to working exclusively with me, they don't have clear and present needs that can be met. Meaning what they're thinking they want is, again, back to this listing, an overpriced listing, he had clear and present needs, just couldn't be met. So not really a client, he was still more of a prospect at that point, okay? Now, so let's say though that I have somebody who is committed to working exclusively with me, they have clear and present needs that can be met, they're ready to go now, but I don't have an appointment with them. Well, based on what I just said, they're now a prospect, okay? So the way that we're going to manage prospects, so think of the tether down here in the appointment with my clients is about tethering them and managing them client. Well, how would I manage a prospect if it's the appointment that I'm missing? So meaning, you've got somebody who is committed to working exclusively with you, clear and present needs that can be met, they're ready to go now, but you don't have an appointment with them. How should you manage them?
Call and set up an appointment.
Okay, good. So I'm going to be calling to hopefully set up an appointment, but if I can't get an appointment, then how often should I call them? At minimum.
I mean.
Once a
if
quarter.
they're daily,
Yeah, that's why I'm saying at minimum, but if they're hot, if they fit this, clear and present needs that can be met, they're ready to go now, you should probably be calling daily, but no less than one time per week. So think of this as, you could call these leads too, okay? These are my leads. You should be calling them a minimum. You're going to manage them one time a week until they become a client, right? So I'm going to be calling once a week until they become a client. Or I'm going to call once a week until they become what we'll talk about over here is the SOI. Okay, they're going to go into my SOI, or I'm going to drop them. Okay, so think of it that way. The whole purpose of us prospecting, when we prospect on a daily basis, our whole purpose of prospecting is to set an appointment so that we can go find out if they are committed to working exclusively with us, if they have clear and present needs that can be met, and if they're ready to do it now, and then get that appointment. Well, I'm going to call weekly until that happens, at minimum a weekly, at least once a week. But if not, then I'm going to put them over to here. So again, back to, let's say I had somebody that's committed to working exclusively with me, but they're clear and present need, or they have clear and present needs that can be met. They're just like, yeah, we just want to wait till summer for whatever reason. Well, then that's not going to be a now person. So I wouldn't want to work with them the same way. So I'm going to move them over here to this SOI then. So now what we're going to do is spend the rest of the time talking about what are the 4 protocols that go into working this sphere of influence. Now, but I have one other thing that we need to cover before I get into that, okay? And the reason of why I want to do this. So remember I started this whole thing today by telling you that the way that most people approach working their sphere of influence is as a people problem. Well, what happens is something like this. When we prospect, when we go out and just prospect in general, we're prospecting in typically and I know there's exceptions to everything, but typically when you're prospecting in the general population. Okay. And if you were to just go out and just knock on random doors, And again, I know this will vary depending on the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff, but if I go out and just knock on some random doors, I pick a neighborhood. And I went and knocked on doors. So if I just got a map and I drew a circle on that map. And it would have to be a pretty large circle on the map for this to take place, what I'm saying. But what are the odds that somebody is going to be moving within that area?
3%, 1 to 3%.
Okay.
But
I just realized I'm supposed to show you a video first, but go ahead.
More than that, but 1 to 3% of the actual conversations.
So what do you mean by that?
So you may go hit 100 doors, you're only gonna
Oh,
talk,
gotcha,
you're gonna talk to 20 people,
gotcha.
you gotta hit 400 doors,
Gotcha.
or 500 doors. To get through 100 people and have that success happen.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now remember I said we're gonna talk about some math. I gotta show you one video before we do this math. So let me get this pulled up and ready here.
And that's the same for like cold prospecting too, right? Like it's 1 in 100 will be a lead, and then you have to get 4 leads to get to a. You know,
Yep, that's what we're gonna talk about. Yep, exactly. All right, so let me find where did my screen share? Okay, so I've got this video I'm gonna show you real quick here. Let me turn off the light so you guys can see a little bit better. Now, so what you're gonna see here, which, oh, real quick, hang on. On Zoom, I got more than 3 people on there, but I'm only seeing 3 things in the chat box. So for the rest of you that are on Zoom, make sure you throw your name in the chat box, just so I have a record. Okay, what we're gonna be watching here, this is a video of a video or a clip from a TV show that was called Mom and Pa Kettle, which was clearly back when TV was in black and white. So there was no color TV, black and white. And this was a sitcom that was on TV. And we're going to watch this for, it's a couple minutes long, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so here we go.
Percentage. I figure 75% to you, Pa and Ma, and 25% divided between the 5 of us. Yida, Crowbar, myself, Tom, and the baby. That makes 5% for each one of us.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If there's 25% divided among the 5 of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, no, listen, Pa. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now, look here. I'll show you. Let me rub this out here. And now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, 5 won't go into 2, will it? No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times, you see?
No, you're wrong, Billy. Now, I'm a pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25, 5 won't go into 2, will it?
No.
But 5 goes into 5 once. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so we bring it down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. There you are. 5 into 25, 14.
No, look, Pa. Let me prove it to you now by multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25.
Really, I'm surprised you're learning.
Huh?
I'm surprised that you're learning. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No, look, Ma. See, look, you're wrong there because I'll prove it to you. We'll put down 5 14s here. 14. There. Now I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There you are. Better brush up, Billy. I don't want to see you boys cheated.
All right. Let me stop the screen. Okay. So now, the reason I show you that video is because in a minute here, you're gonna think I'm doing mom pocket math, but I'm really not, okay? And I'll show you what that looks like. So, okay, so back to now, if I took a map and I drew a circle on it, and I wanted to find out like what percentage of the people inside of that circle are going to be moving. Now, again, like I said, if you just went to one neighborhood, there's not enough data there for this to come out. But if you did it a pretty large size, and when I say large, it wouldn't even have to be like all of Salt Lake County, but probably if you took Salt Lake County and did 4 different circles, that would still work, okay? Now, the chances that somebody is going to be moving, according to the Census Bureau, is 12%. 12% of the population will move every year, according to the Census Bureau. Well, but that includes renters. If you factor out the renters, then what we end up with is basically 7% of the people in any given area are going to be in the process of buying or selling. Now, the reason I bring that up is because of this. When I first started, when I was a new agent, and I went and I talked to my manager at the office, and I asked him, what should I be doing for prospecting? And he told me to go work your sphere of influence. But then I was like, okay, I've mailed a card to everybody in my sphere of influence. Now what? He told me, go out and knock on doors. So there was 2 things that he said. Go out and knock on doors. And number 1, if you'll do it for 2 hours every day for 2 years, you'll never have to do it again. I was like, okay. And he said, and then number 2 is, and which, by the way, what I'm about to say, I don't believe is true, but I'll show you. I'm telling you what I was told. Okay. So what he said to me though, is he said, if you'll go out and knock on 100 doors, and back to what Aaron said, really, probably it was more talk to 100 people, not knock on 100 doors, because you're going to knock on more than 100 doors to get 100 people. But he said, if you go talk to 100 people from knocking on doors, you should get 10 leads from going and knocking on 100 doors. And from those 10 leads, you should turn that into 1 transaction. Okay. Now, the reason I say to you, I don't believe that that's actually true is because here's what happened. Was the other thing that my manager said to me was, how much money do you want to make in real estate? And I was like most new agents that come in, and I said, what would you guess? How much money did I want? 100 grand. Yep. I gave the normal answer that most agents give. I wanted to make $100,000. Well, when I started, the average commission check was $2,000. So if I wanted to do 100,000, and I was going to make $2,000 per closing, how many closings do I need to do? 50. Okay. So I needed to do 50. Now, so the other thing my manager told me is this: if you'll go knock on and talk to 50 people every day, then you'll make $100,000. Well, I did that. So I was doing 50 contacts every day, which equates to 250 contacts a week is what I was doing. Now, Aaron, I know you've spent, I don't know about everybody else, I have an idea with Chad, but you've spent a fair amount of time on the phone, right?
Yep, in the past even more.
And what?
I'm just getting back into the.
Okay. So, but to do 50 contacts a day takes you about how long, would you say?
5+ hours.
Okay, yeah, so you're somewhere around 5 hours a day, okay? But now let me go back to what my manager said. If you talk to, which if you have not heard this yet in the business, you're gonna hear people say, if you talk to 100 people, you should get 10 leads, should turn into 1 transaction. Well, I was doing 250 people a week, which if you followed the math on that, that would have meant I should have gotten 25 leads every week and closed 2.5 transactions a week, or 100 transactions in a year. That never happened to me, that I did that by fault doing. Did you ever?
No, to go that long, you're not getting any good conversations.
Yeah, see, that's the other problem that I learned too as well. Now, so here's what I want to show you then. What the reason I bring all of this up is to show you this. Here's the problem. This is the problem with this. And where this came from, the idea of if you talk to 100 people, you should get 10 leads and turn into 1 transaction. Where that came from is back tied to this. According to the census, 7% of the people across the country are going to be moving every single year, buying or selling real estate. Well, if that's true, and I talk to 100 people and 7% are going to be in the process of doing something, how many leads should I be able to get from talking to 100 people?
7.
Okay, so now remember I said I'm gonna do mom and pop kettle math? The answer in mom and pop kettle math is always 14. So I'm gonna get 14 potential. Why? Why would I get 14 and not 7?
Because attrition gets you to the 7. Like the 50% reduction. Like
Okay.
what you're talking about.
That's not what I mean, but you're right on. But what I'm saying is if 7 houses are going to sell, that will be 14 transactions.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
buyer and seller.
Yeah, because there's a buy side and a seller side. So instead of it being 7, it's actually 14. See, we just remember the answer to any math problem, the answer is always 14. It's mom and pop kettle math. Okay. But so that's where this actually, I believe that's where this came from. The whole idea of this legacy, real estate is full of these anecdotal stories that we tell. We tell a whole bunch of stories of like this type of stuff. If you talk to 100 people, you should get 10 leads. And well, where that came from is this, is essentially, it just sounds better to say 10 instead of 14 here. So that's where this came from, okay? Now, here's the problem with it though. Let's hypothetically say this is true. Let's just say this is true. And remember, I already told you that like I went out and knocked on doors and I did all that stuff. And I was doing, I would do 25 contacts in the morning, going out and knocking on doors. Then in the afternoon, I would do 25 on the phone. And I wasn't getting, I mean, after a year, I had not closed 50 transactions, by the way, like I had closed 17. So I had done okay. But with this, where this comes from, this sounds good, doesn't it? If you talk to 100 people, you'll get 10 leads and turn it into a transaction. I mean, like that, it sounds really good, but here's the problem with that. So now remember, I told you we're going to talk about 4 protocols. The first protocol we're going to talk about is what's called a closed system. Now, in math, this would be called an open system. Okay, so we're going to talk about 2 types of systems for a minute here. An open system and a closed system. The problem that most people have, that most agents have in working their sphere of influence is they work it as an open system. And in an open system, what this sounds good, but that's what this actually says is not what you intuitively think it says. So we're going to talk statistics for a second here, because what this is saying is 1 out of 10. But another way of saying that in terms of odds is 9 to 1. Okay. So if the odds are 9 to 1, when we hear this, what we think happens is this, is that if I go talk to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people, what should happen? So let's say that I go and prospect to 9 people. I get told no, 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 no. So I've been told 9 times no. According to this, what should happen on the next door?
You should get a yes.
I should get a yes. That's the problem with this. When we talk about this, we relate to it as if 1 out of 10 are going to say yes. But in reality, what happens?
They say no.
Yeah, now, so I'm going to now show you why that is. Because really what this says is this.
Those transactions are happening, but they're not tethered. They're not.
That, yeah, good. Yes, love it. So if I go and talk to Caesar, right? And he says no. So let me back up. The odds are 9 to 1. So when I go talk to him, what are the odds that he's going to say yes?
90% no.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go, I got a 10% chance of a yes, but a 90% chance of no. Okay, so now I leave and I go to Aubrey. Now what are my odds? See, that's what we think it should be, but in actuality,
So 90.
they don't change. In an open system, the odds don't change. So after Aubrey, I go to Urbano. What are my odds now?
Same.
Same. Then I go to check. Same. It doesn't matter how many times I talk to people. even on number 10 contact, the odds of them saying yes, or excuse me, no, are 9 times greater than that they're going to say yes. Now, I'm not trying to discourage you, but I just want you to understand how this works. So let me show you this. I brought my dice here. We'll see if I should be going to Vegas today or not. Sometimes I'm like, I should be in Vegas, and the other days I'm like, I'm glad I'm not. Pick a number between 1 and 6.
5.
Okay, so what are the, on this, there are 6 sides to this dice. What are the odds that I would roll a 5?
Well, that's it.
1 out of 6. So now let's see what happens.
Go to Vegas.
Okay, so there's 1. Let's see how many times I have to roll it to get a 5. So for you guys on Zoom, I'll let you know when I roll it. So far I have not. I've rolled it twice, not gotten a 5.
Dang it. It says that one.
There's 3 times. 4 times. Look at when it works out perfectly.
Oh.
Didn't. All right. So I had to roll it 5 times and I got a 5. But so let me do it again this way. So we're going to do it one more time. What are the odds that I'm going to roll a 5?
1 and 6.
1 out of 6.
It is
Okay. So now what are they now?
1 out of 6.
See, that's the problem in an open system, is in an open system, what are the odds now?
1 and 6.
1 and 6. See, in an open system,
Or when it's-
There it is.
I should be in Vegas.
Yeah.
Say it again here.
Karma and your equity and your time and energy spent doesn't mean a thing to the ratio of the odds.
That's right. Now, there is, so I did have one time, and this agent is actually a very successful agent, but I taught this to probably 10 years ago. And I was talking about this and he just said to me, he waited till a break. He didn't do it during the class, which I wouldn't have cared if he did, but on a break, he came up to me and he's like, you're wrong. The odds do get better that number is going to come up every time you roll the dice. And I was like, no, the odds are still 1 out of 6. And he said, yeah, but the more times you do it, the more likely it's going to come up. And so just to be like full disclosure, there is something in math called regression towards the mean, which does say if you do it. Now, and here's how I didn't answer it to him then, but just in case anybody else is thinking that same way, the way I always answer it now is that is true, meaning the more times you do it, the more likely that number might come up. But here's the problem with it. In order for, if I rolled this, if we just said, okay, let's do it right now and see how many times I have to roll it to get a 5, I might roll it 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Well, you could just say, okay, well, the next time it's going to more likely come up. And I might roll it 20 times. I've had times in the class where I've rolled it over 20 times and still not gotten the number, but it doesn't change the odds of the next roll. Now, so if you were to go and play roulette in Vegas, that, you know, they show the numbers and how they've come up and all that kind of stuff to where then you can kind of try to bet on that regression towards the mean. But the main thing I want you to see from this is in order for me to roll this and actually get to where the odds are 1 out of 6, I'm probably going to have to roll it 1,000,000 times. And then it probably would then come up the 5, 1 out of about every 6 times. How excited are you to say, this is going to work for you? You just got to go make 1,000,000 contacts. Do you think you've made 1,000,000 contacts in your career, Aaron?
No.
I know, even that's same with me, even with doing 250, and I did that for a long time. I don't think I ever got to it. That's the problem. That's an open system. Okay. So the first protocol that we're going to talk about today is working your sphere of influence has to be a closed system. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, let me show you. We're going to do the same thing now. I'm going to roll this dice again. And we're going to see how many times I have to roll it to get a 5. Only I'm going to change the rules. Okay. And because it's my game, I get to decide the rules. So don't go try this in Vegas. You'll end up out in the desert somewhere dead. But don't try this in Vegas. But because it's our business, it's my real estate career, my game, I get to decide the rules. Okay. So here's the rule. I'm going to roll this dice, and every time I roll it and I don't get a 5, I'm going to put a sticker on it. And then after that, if I roll it and a sticker shows up, it's a free throw. It doesn't count. So now let's see how many times I have to roll it to get a 5. Okay. One, there we go. Okay, so we're 1 to 1 right now. Let's see what happens this time.
It is.
Oh my gosh.
For you guys on Zoom, twice.
Yeah.
That is how it goes sometimes.
Jacks up your ratio, keeps it all true.
Yeah.
All right, so I just rolled a 2. So now I'm gonna put a sticker on here. So I've rolled it 1 time, we got a 2. But if that sticker shows up, we're not gonna count it. I get a free throw, okay?
Oh, there it is. A big room.
All right, so got a 3 on that one. I woke the dog's gonna now, when I roll it, go chase it. All right, so we've rolled it 2 times, still haven't gotten a 5. Free throw. Okay, so the sticker showed up, doesn't count. So how many times have I rolled it?
0.
Twice.
Twice, yeah, Phil.
Twice. Okay, good. You get it. Okay,
There it is.
okay, so I had to roll it how many times to get a 5?
3.
3. Okay, now let's keep going and see what happens. Free throw. Free throw. So I still haven't even rolled it yet. That's 3 threes in a row, by the way. 4. It must be weighted now, right? Okay, there's a 1. So now we've rolled it 1 time. Haven't gotten a 5. 2 times. But there's sticker on the 4. So free throw. There's the 6. So, okay, so now, just so I don't have to keep doing squats. I've got a sticker on every single number but the 5. So what's gonna happen?
Roll 5.
Yeah, it's either gonna be a free throw
Or it's gonna be 5.
or it's the 5, which will mean I'll roll it how many times this time?
1 time.
3
3 times.
again, right? Boom, there it was. So now what's gonna happen though? Now what's gonna be my odds?
1-1.
1 to 1, because it's either a free throw or a 5. That's a closed system. If you could go do that in Vegas, I would not be here. Okay, does that make sense though? Do you understand the difference? Open system and a closed system. In a closed system, the more times you do it, which that's what we just saw, by the way. What you just saw take place is the more times I rolled the dice, the better my odds got. Every time I rolled this and I didn't get a 5, I put a sticker on it, which then improved the odds. So then the odds did go from 1 out of 6 to 1 out of 5 to then it was 1 out of 4, 1 out of 3. Essentially, does that make sense? That's what we're talking about here. In an open system, the odds never get better. Your skills can get better, but the odds don't get better. In a closed system, the more you do it, the better the odds become. Okay, so now how do we make our sphere of influence a closed system? Well, the way we do that is essentially it has to be fixed in size. Okay. So what the first protocol of working your sphere of influence is it needs to be fixed in size. You can't have an unlimited number of people. Like I go to seminars or used to go to seminars where these trainers, speakers would bring agents up on stage and they'd say, how many people in your SOI? And they'd say 4,000 or 5,000. And then this same trainer would say, you should be able to get a 10 to 15% return off of your sphere of influence, which again, sounds great. But if I'm an agent and I have 4,000 people in my database and I'm going to get a 10% return, how many transactions does that mean I'm going to do every year?
400.
Yeah, 400. How many agents are doing 400 that have, let me rephrase that. How many agents that have these 4,000 or 5,000 people in a database are doing 400 transactions a year?
Probably none of them.
Yeah, I would guess none of them are doing that. Now, that's the problem in an open system. Versus in a closed system, what you're going to do is instead of this 7%, you're increasing that percentage. So what we're going to be looking for is actually to mature our database. So I'll explain what that means in just 1 second. But here's what I want you to know. You can get and should get, that's probably a better way to say it. You should get a 60% return off of your database. for when your database is what I call mature. So when you have this fixed in size number of people becomes mature, you should see a 60% return off of that. Now, let me define what I mean by return. I'm not saying 60% closings, but I'm saying you should get leads from 60% of the people every year. They should either do a deal with you or refer somebody to you that does a deal every year. Okay, so now how does that work? What that's going to look like is this. The process for this is going to look something like this. Probably ought to do a different color so that the people on Zoom can see. Can you guys see the green? Somebody unmute that's on Zoom. Can you see my green on there or no?
Barely.
No.
Okay, okay, thanks. I'll try to do a darker color here. I don't know if that's any better, but if it's not better, come and be in person next time. I'm kidding, sort of.
The
All
odds
right.
were better for you.
Yeah, the odds were better for you. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. The process of this is going to look something like this. Okay. When you are going to start working this, and now, so here's the thing, and Aaron and I actually, and I hope you don't care if I say this, but we were talking before the class started about him coming back here. I would recommend for you guys to come back to this class every single time I teach it until you get to the point of what I would call right here is where it's mature. This is where it's going to mature, is right there. And my definition of mature is going to be a 60% return. Okay. Now, here's my frustration though. I started this class by telling you, I will 100% guarantee you this will work. And it is guaranteed to work if you'll follow these 4 protocols. My frustration though is, and which I should point out, Chad, you're probably how many, do you dare say, or do I dare ask, how many times have you come to this?
I think this is number 3.
Is it 3? Okay, I wasn't sure. I was going to say 4, but
Yeah,
But-
3 or
4
4.
for me.
what, Carla?
4 for me.
4 for you. Okay, good.
This is my favorite class.
Thank you. So, but for me, and I'll tell you, for me, before it really, the light clicked on and it worked for me, I attended many, many times. I don't remember how many, but I know it was probably more than 4 or 5. But don't miss this part. I always have to say that. I'm kidding. I always have to say that when somebody walks out. Don't miss this. So here's my frustration though, is because at the end of the class, you're going to be excited about it. You're going to see how, yeah, I can see how that math would work out. But what I found is most people leave here and then they don't go do it. And so that's why I recommend keep coming back to this and go, okay, I got to fine tune. Because the other thing is, I have taught this class for over 10 years, and I've taught the same thing essentially for over 10 years. And I have people, and I don't know, Chad or Aaron, you can tell me if you would agree or disagree with this, but I have some people are like, you must have updated the class, or you said something different than you said before. And I'm like, no, I pretty much think I say the same thing pretty much every time. But you're just going to pick up different things based on where you're at. Okay, now, so here's what happens though, is what I have noticed is people will leave here all excited, but then they don't go do it. And it took me a while to figure out, so why do they not go do it? And what I realized is this. Who knows about how bamboo grows? Besides the ones who have been to class before. Have you been here before?
I've been to this
Okay,
class,
tell me about bamboo.
It takes like years of like take care of it and watering it in order to get results. If you miss like a feeding or a watering, whatever, it'll die in the ground, you'll never know. And then I guess that was like 5 years, I think, until it starts to actually see something. Then right after that, it just grows in like a few.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
What I want you to, so in case you guys on Zoom couldn't hear what he said. Basically, bamboo takes, it's in the 5th year that it grows. And when it grows really fast up to like 90 feet. And it does it in a couple of weeks. But what was it doing the first 4 years before it started to do that?
Just hanging out on the ground.
Yeah, what it was doing is putting its root structure in place so that it could grow that quickly. Well, so keep in mind, now, the good news is this is not gonna take 4 or 5 years to happen. But it is gonna take a few months before you're gonna start to see this type of a return. And so here's the problem, and the reason I like to bring up the bamboo story is during the first 4 or 5 months, maybe even 3 to 5 months. Because you can get it to be mature between 6 and 9 months, okay? So 6 to 9 months from today, you should be able to start seeing a return from this. But keep in mind, during the first 3 to 5 months, it's gonna feel like bamboo, like I'm watering it, I'm doing all this stuff and nothing's happening. It's not working. And what I realized is people give up during that time. So just like you were saying on the bamboo, if you don't keep nurturing it, I don't know if that's the right word, but if you don't keep nurturing the bamboo and you miss it, then it's gonna die and you'll never even know. Well, same thing applies with this. You've got to keep working it, even though the first little while, if you look at this line, it feels like nothing's happening. But 6 to 9 months from now, it's going to then take off and you're going to see great returns on it. Okay. Now, what we're looking for, though, again, is this 60% return. And to me, that's when I would say it is mature. Now, with that, so let's finish off protocol number 1. Protocol number 1 is that it's got to be closed system is the main thing, which what that just means is it's fixed in size. So how big should it be? Here's what I have learned is the number that you want it to be initially is 200. Now, keep in mind, the protocol is just that it's fixed in size. That the main thing to remember in this is the protocol is fixed in size. So the number doesn't matter as much as the fixed in size matters. But what I've learned is 200 is a number that most agents can reasonably handle and work and do this without getting overwhelmed and then stopping to do it. Now, once you've matured, once it hits the 60%, change this number to anything you want it to be. I don't care. You decide. Here's what I will tell you, though. I have learned that probably the lowest that this number can be and still work for you is 75. The highest I've seen where and one individual agent on their own. Now, if you're working as a team, that you could change this number could be per person. But the most I've seen an individual agent be able to do and still effectively do it is 300. So you decide once it matures, once it's matured, you decide. Do you want it to be 300? Do you want it to be 100? Do you want it to be 150? For me, when I was doing this in my business, the number was 150. My fixed in size number was 150 people. But what I've learned, which actually, let me say this. If you wanted to start it out at 100 versus 200, you can do that. Just know here's what I found. Less than 200, you're extending the time for it to actually start to work. So 200 seems to be the number that if you're more than 200, it seems like it takes longer. If you're less than 200, it seems like it takes longer. So 200 seems to be the magic number. Once it's matured, if you don't want to do 200 because you're saying that's too much work, which you're going to see it's not that much work. But if you felt like 200 was too much work, you could do it with 150. Do any of you guys know Tonya Messina? Anybody heard the name? Maybe? Okay. So Aaron has, I don't know if anybody on Zoom, but she is one of the agents that I taught in this, she has her own brokerage now. And she when I say her own brokerage, she's not like out recruiting agents. In fact, I don't even know if she has any besides her team. It is her brokerage, but she runs her business still today this way of doing exactly what we're talking about here. Now, the reason I bring that up is her number, once she got it matured, the number of people that she was working fixed in size. And this, again, the last I talked to her was probably 6 years ago. So it's been a while, but 6 years ago with 97 people, she was closing for her income over $300,000 a year with 97 people fixed in size. And she works solely off of referral. She doesn't do anything beyond working her sphere of influence. So this works, and so that, again, think what our prices were 6 years ago, and she was making that. So probably now she would be 700,000 or 800,000 would be my guess. But I need to follow up with her and see where she's at. But
Tony Messina, I thought was like a baseball player or something.
oh no, Tonya Messina, yeah. No, she's an agent here in the valley. And yeah,
What was her max
what was her?
number? Max number of SOI?
Oh, 97 was hers.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how she came up with that number in a minute, and how I came up with the number of 150, and how you'll decide what that number wants to be for you. But before we do that, I first want to talk to you about protocol number 2, okay? So now, and actually, any questions on protocol number 1? We good with that? It's got to be fixed in size, 200 to begin with. Once it's matured, you can change it to whatever you want, okay? All right, protocol number 2. Protocol number 2 is going to be that you have to have permission. So from all 200 people, we want to get permission. Now, I'll show you what that looks like. How I would recommend you doing this is call up all the people who you currently have in your database or in your cell phone. So all of you have a number of people that are saved in your cell phone, okay? What you want to do is start by calling all of those people who are either currently in a database that you have or that are in your cell phone, just contacts that you have saved in your cell phone. Now, if it's another agent, obviously you're not going to call them probably, but outside of that, and the reason I say probably is if it's an agent in another state or, St. George or something, you could actually even put them in as one of the people if you wanted to, okay? But you're going to call and get permission from them. This is what that's going to sound like. So you want to call up the people and just say something along the lines of this. And part of why I taught the class this in December was because it's a perfect excuse to start doing this with your people that are either in your cell phone or your database or your Christmas card list, whatever. But is call them up and just say, hey, 2023 is right around the corner. So, and you don't have to say it that way. You could just say, hey, I've been analyzing my business and I want to change the way I'm operating my business. But if you want to right now be like, hey, I'm putting together my business plan for 2023. And I decided I want my business to be primarily referral dependent. Okay, so just call them up and just say, I'm putting together my business plan for 2023. I want my business in 2023 to be primarily referral dependent. I want to work off of referrals. I want to work with great people like you, something like that. So what I'm doing is putting together, and this is the key piece, a select group of people. So you want to make sure you say, I'm putting together a select group of people. Now, why do I say select group of people? What does that sound like?
Exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah. And based on what we've just talked about with this fixed in size closed system, it really is, you're creating a select group of people. So I'm putting together a select group of people that I will stay in touch with about real estate. I would like to add you to that list. Would that be okay? So essentially that's permission. The key words you just want, you say it however you want to say it, but just say, I'm putting together a select group of people that I'm going to stay in touch with about real estate. I'd like to add you to that list. Would that be okay? They're going to say yes. Now, what if they say no?
They just did you a favor.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So ultimately, though, very few are going to tell you no. Now, I did have one guy, which I love telling this story. I had one guy that lives up the street from me. And when I called him and asked him that, I'm putting together a select group of people I'd like to add you to the list. Would that be okay? He said, you can add me if you want, but if I was selling my house, I just feel like our friendship and stuff, I wouldn't want to interfere with that in the business. And so I think I would use somebody else. And I said, so then I just said, well, I'm okay with that, but would you be willing to let me refer you an agent then? And he said, yeah, that'd be fine. And I said, but if you hear of somebody else or a friend or a family member, would you be willing to refer them to me? And he said, yeah, I would do that. Great. I added him to the list. And he did refer people to me. Like I helped him, his sister-in-law sell a property up in Ogden. But that's what you're looking for. So I'm putting together a select group of people that like want to add you to the list. What that means is I would be staying in touch with you about real estate. And would that be okay? Yes, you got permission. Okay. If you're just out doing your day-to-day prospecting, so just whatever, I don't care what form of prospecting you're doing. If you're knocking on doors, you're calling on the phone, internet leads, it doesn't matter to me. What you want to do is your first primary objective is to set an appointment when you're prospecting, right? We already talked about that. But my secondary objective, if I can't get an appointment, is to say, I have a select group of people that I stay in touch with about real estate. I would like to add you to that list. Would that be okay? So notice it's essentially the same script. I have a select group is the only thing I'm going to say different versus my current database. I'm saying I'm putting together a select group. When you're prospecting, I have a select group of people that I stay in touch with about real estate. I'd like to add you to that list. Would that be okay? Yes. Now you've got permission. So far, so good, right? Not hard, right? Okay. Number 3. First, though, any questions on the permission part?
By the way, Russ, we've really, with our team, been hitting this hard with the
Good.
whole SOI,
Good.
doing exactly this.
Good.
And I'm telling you right now, I've had person after person thank me
Yep.
for putting them on my list.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's great. That's just it. And, you know, and I think about it in my neighborhood that I live in now. I actually had at one point, I had a large number of my select group of people were in my current neighborhood that I live in now. Since I started doing training, though, I have not done anything for 10 years to that group. And there are a ton of agents that live in my neighborhood, like a lot of real estate agents. But I have sold more houses in the neighborhood than any other agent because of doing exactly this. And it's just because the problem is most people don't realize, most of your SOI doesn't realize you want their business because you haven't told them. And so they just assume that you show up here, we hand you leads and you go do them. Like that's how most of it works. So by talking to them and saying, hey, you could even call and say, I've set some pretty outrageous goals for next year and I could use some help. And I'm putting together a select group of people that will help me refer people. If you heard of somebody thinking of buying or selling, who would you refer them to? Well, you, of course. Great. I want to add you to this list. Okay. All right. Number 3. So the third piece of this is contact. Okay. So with this group of 200 people, this fixed in size group, you want to have contact with them one time per month, either mail or email. And you can do a combination too, is fine. But you need to have contact with them once a month by mail or email, and then one time per month personal. Some type of a personal contact with them. Could be a text.
Face to face, or are you talking
Yep.
phone call,
Either,
text?
whatever, doesn't matter. Could, as long as you have permission, could be a text, could be you run into them at the grocery store, the gym, church, I don't care what it is. But once a month. Now, and here's the key thing. Now, I already mentioned to you that I had a ton of people in my neighborhood. Well, we have a neighborhood pool that's right outside of my backyard. And in the summer, my youngest, he's 14 now, but 10 years ago, he was 4 years old. 10 years ago, I was literally over at that swimming pool every single night in the summer. And so I would see these people constantly down at the swimming pool, but only once a month would I talk to them about real estate. So if I saw them at the pool other days, I would just, hey, how's the family? Or, you know, whatever. I talked to them about other things, but one time per month, I would just say, hey, just quick question for you. You know, want to make sure you got the mailing that I sent to you or the email that I sent to you. Did you have any questions on that? No. Do you know of anybody thinking of buying or selling? So that's the idea of this. So the personal contact once a month, that personal contact is just, hey, just checking in to see if there's anything I can do for you. Now, let me take this even a step further for you to understand what I mean by that. Because yes, we want it to be about real estate, but I actually turned this into a networking group, really, is kind of what it was too. So I would just say, hey, is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything me or this select group of people that I have could help you with? And occasionally somebody say, well, only if you know somebody who does, fixes cars or something, and then what you can do is go back to that select group of people, send out an email and go, hey, I need some help. Now, I'm going to share a story with you that did not happen to me, but it happened to an agent that I trained this in. So she had put out this to the group. She was making her phone calls. In the one phone call, the seller says, she says, is there anything I can help you with, either real estate related or not? And the lady said, well, only if you know this certain kind of doctor, some specialized doctor. And she said, well, I don't, but I'd be happy to ask my select group of people. And she said, oh, it's fine. You don't need to. It's just, we found out my daughter has this rare disease. She needs this surgery, but there's only one of those doctors apparently in Utah. And she said, he's so booked up that we can't get in for months, which will probably be fine. But I'm going to be worried for that long. She said, well, let me see what I can do. So she sends it out to the 200 people, says, does anybody know this type of a doctor? And one of the people writes back and says, my brother is that exact type of a doctor in Pennsylvania. And she said, do you think you could get one of my other clients in to see him sooner than however many months it was, 3 or 4 months? And she said, I don't know, let me find out. Called her brother, said, could you see him? He said, yep, but they're going to have to come here, obviously, to Pennsylvania. Said, if they want to fly back here, though, I would meet with them, and had a date that was, not far out. She called back the client, says, hey, found a doctor for you that does that. He'll see you on this date. You're going to have to go to Pennsylvania, but you can get in sooner. And she's like, no way. I can't believe you really did that. Anyway,
Talk about tethering.
that's what I was just going to say. Do you think that person's going to list their house with somebody else after that?
No chance.
And do you think when you walk in and say it's 7%, they're going to bat an eye? No.
Nope.
So that's the idea. Use this personal contact, not just about who can I help sell a house, but who do you know that I can help? Let me give you one other idea too. The other thing that I did with this personal group, or this select group, is I would found out, like, what did they do for business? And in my old neighborhood that I lived in, a guy that lived in the neighborhood that I had in my select group, he fertilized lawns. And I one day just was out mowing the lawn and I was like, I never have a weed in my yard. Like, I just felt like he did such a good job. So the next time I saw him, his name was Bill. I said, hey, Bill, you fertilized my lawn for however many years. And I said, like, it's awesome. I never have a weed. I have, this select group that you're in. I want to recommend you to them. What kind of a discount would you give to these other 199 people if they used your services? And he said, I'll do the first spring for free so they could try it out. And then after that, you just be my regular pricing. So I said, great. Can I put together a coupon that I would send out to these 200 people? I'll give it to you first for you to say, yeah, that works. And he said, yeah. So I put together a coupon, took it to him, said, I want to mail this out. Is that good? Yep. Mailed it out. And I just said, look, I can't guarantee his work, but he's done a great job for me. Here's what he'll do for you. Like, imagine going to the 200 people you have in there and just trying to figure out that type of a, hey, what kind of a discount? Because that was the other thing I found is if I quarterly did a mailing rather than an email, did a mailing that was a, hey, here's a coupon or here's a this that I recommend. The people like the idea of being there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just having an epiphany moment from, like, you're offering value to these people too. Like, somebody might need, lawn care or a doctor or something, and it also helps the people who have other businesses that, they see you helping them as well. Going back to like the tethering thing and having you as a person, it's not just, hey, do you have business for me? It's not you asking them for that. It's more about offering them value, showing that, we can work together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Check.
It's one thing that I've started to do on the email portion is get them set up on the neighborhood.
Yeah, good. So thank you.
And that's my one email.
Perfect.
Create value, whether they're buying or selling. to give them value about kind of where they're at.
Perfect, yeah, so good, so that, and I just realized I hadn't said that yet, so thank you. On the once a month email, what my recommendation is, so when you call and get permission, get their email address. Obviously, you probably have their phone number if you're talking to them on the phone, but if you're out knocking on doors and you were adding somebody, get their phone number. But take their email address, put them into Moxie Engage and put them on the neighborhood news. Then once a month, it's gonna send out to them from the neighborhood news. It's gonna send out an email that shows them in your area, here's the homes that are for sale, the ones that are under contract, and what has sold. Now, on the sold on Moxie Engage, it shows the list price of that sold home. It doesn't show the sold price. So just kind of know that as you're working it. But that's what I found is that's how I did it, was I didn't have Moxie Engage when I was doing it, but I had an assistant that would put together a, here's the homes in your neighborhood that sold, here's what's under contract, here's what's currently for sale, and then I would send that out to them every month. And people like seeing what's going on in their neighborhood. So I found that very few people will unsubscribe from that, and it's stuff they're interested in. Like I set my wife currently is set up on neighborhood news, and my wife is one that complains about that kind of stuff. But she has never once said to me, remove me from off this. I'm tired of getting these emails. And in fact, a lot of times what will happen is she'll start to talk to me about one of the houses in the neighborhood that's sold or for sale or something. And I occasionally will forget I've set her up on this, and I'll be like, how did you know? She'll like, you send me an email every month. Oh yeah. So that's the idea of this context.
Russ,
So,
there's an app called Homekeeper
okay,
that allows you to basically put in different trades, electricians, plumbers, mechanics, whatever it is you want to add to that list.
okay,
And then you can add your clients to that list or this top, whatever.
okay.
And they have access to
And then
that
it,
list.
then it's just on the app for them already.
Yep. It's a paid app.
Homekeeper. Okay,
Homekeeper.
okay, cool. Appreciate that.
So one question, so would it make sense to have, let me kind of talk about neighborhood news. Would it make, because I have a few areas I go to, and I'll go to that area for a week, another area for a week.
Sure.
Kind of cycle through. Would it be beneficial to have like a different group? Like of people you're
No.
emailing, just one of
Just,
that email?
yep, one group.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't matter where, yeah, think of it as it's a, instead of a, I've had some people say, well, this kind of sounds like a farm, but it's not a geographic farm, it's a demographic farm. So it doesn't matter where they live. What you're just looking for is the people who have given you permission to stay in touch, and then you're gonna start doing this now. So yeah, so it doesn't matter where, don't have separate groups, and because the problem is if you have separate groups, all of a sudden you'll quit doing it. Yeah, so, okay, good. All right. Now, let me show you how this works, and then we'll get to protocol 4, okay? So just for the sake of ease of numbers, we're gonna say that I have 100 people in the database, okay? Now, I'm not giving you permission to start it at 100. Well, actually, let me take that back. You can, just remember, it's gonna take you longer for it to come about, okay? Now, let's say of the 100, the way that I classify the people in there of these 100 or in, the 200, but in this case, 100 is between red and green, okay? So let's say of the 100 that I have, 50 are green and 50 are red. Now, the definition between green and a red. A green is going to be somebody who's either going to do business with you or refer business to you. A red is somebody who's not. Now, you might ask, well, why would I have anybody in there that is not going to refer people to me? And the answer to that is, if you knew they weren't going to, you wouldn't have them in there. But people lie. People are going to tell you yes. Like when you call to get permission, you're going to have people that say yes, but really are never going to refer anybody to you. They're never going to take your phone call, that kind of stuff. Those ones are the easy ones. You're also going to have people who say yes, And then you call them, and every month when you call them and talk to them, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, if I think of somebody, I'll refer them to you. But they're really never going to. They just don't want to tell you that they're not going to. And where you'll really see this is you go out knocking on doors and you get people and you say, hey, I've got a select group of people and I want to add you to it. Yep, that's great. Add me to your list. Then you'll try to get a hold of them. You'll never get a hold of them again. Well, the reason is because they're just telling you yes to get you off their doorstep.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. So that's why you're going to end up with some that are red. Okay. Now, let's say though, now watch, what I'm going to show you is how this happens to where you get to the 60%. Because if we were to look at this right now, what are my odds? And that's the reason I'm using 100 instead of 200 is just keep the numbers easier. So the odds are 50-50, right? Now, let's say I go prospect though, and I meet 10 people. Of those 10 people that said yes, I asked for permission. They've said, yes, I can go in my database. So now I'm going to add 10 people to the database. Let's say just because, so I don't really have any reason other than just to show you how this works. Let's say that 2 of them end up being green. They're either going to do business or refer business to you, but 8 of them are red. Now, like I said, if you met them out door knocking, they've said yes, but you don't really know if they're going to be red or green initially. And in fact, the way I always thought about it is that I put them in and they're clear, like I don't know what they are, and they either turn green or they turn red. So that's how I liked to think of it. I've had other people say they think of it as I only put in green and then over time they turn red. However you want to think of it, doesn't matter to me. But so if this is the case, then so look at what happened. So after my week of prospecting, I now have 52 green, 58 red for 100 total of 110 people. Now, what's protocol number 1?
Have a set group.
That's right. So I can't have 110. I can only have 100 in this case. Okay. So what do I got to do?
You gotta boot some people out.
I got to get rid of 10 people. Now, would I want to get rid of any of the greens?
No.
No. So instead, I'm going to subtract now 10 red. Now, here's why. So let me explain something here real quick. This is why an open system doesn't work. In an open system, my workload just went up 10%. To get, somebody do the math of what percentage is 52 out of 110? Somebody got calculator handy? Divide that in 52 into 110.
47%.
Okay, so now look at what happened here. This is the problem with an open system. We started out with 100 people and our odds were 50-50. 50% were green, and I shouldn't say odds, but 50% were green, 50% were red. I add 10 people and look what just happened. I went from 50% green to 47% green, 53% red. What would happen if I keep doing that? So these agents that I tell you have 4,000 people in a database. The problem with that is every time they are adding people, this number is getting worse and worse and worse. But in a closed system, look at what just happened. So now I got rid of these 10. So I'm back to 100. The work stays the same. And now I went up to 52%, down to 48% here. Now, let's just say we reverse it this time. I go out and prospect next week. I get 10 new leads. For whatever reason, it was like the rolling the dice. If I rolled 3-4 times in a row, whatever. But I come up with 8 out of the 10 are going to be green and 2 are going to be red. So now I have 60 green, 50 red for 110 people again. Well, same thing. We can't have 110. So I got to subtract 10. I'm going to get rid of 10 red, the oldest, whatever. We'll talk about that in a minute. So I subtract 10. So now I'm at 40 here, 60 here, back to the 100.
60%.
And now I'm at 60%, 40%. What's going to happen if every week or month I just keep doing that? I just keep doing this.
Now, when you say you get rid of them, like, for example, we talked about neighborhood news, we talked about the newsletter, this, that, and the other, like you shut them off,
Yep.
okay?
Yep, for me, the way I did it was, and especially because for me, back then, my assistant was putting this together. It wasn't an automated system like it is now. And so we just deleted them. And I still would recommend you delete them and not leave them on neighborhood news. If you want to, you can, it's up to you, you decide. But the issue you'll run up against if you keep them is all of a sudden you go from 200 to it becomes a morphed number. So my recommendation is if I were doing it,
Stop.
yep, just take them off.
Wow.
Now-
I would actually leave them on neighborhood news because it's an auto-generated email that you're not having to manually send out. I just wouldn't make the call or spend the time to
Make the effort.
make the effort, right?
And I'm okay with that as long as, the key thing is though, you gotta have some way that you differentiate these people. So if, whether you create a group and you have them in the group and then you took them out of the group, I'm okay with that.
Thinking like this.
Because nowadays you got Facebook, they're gonna know if you've got a Facebook group with this top 200. And somebody gets booted, they're gonna get notified that you booted them.
Yep.
I actually
Well,
like it.
well, and I was gonna say, that's the thing, for me personally, when I did it,
Because they know they're not keeping up their end of the deal.
yeah,
They know it. You don't have to tell them.
yeah. And for me personally, I never said anything, but
Now,
I
what if they
did,
come back and do refer you because you booted them?
then I put them right back in. So, but I did have one agent that she sent an email to the person and said, I'm removing you from my list. And she told me she had done that. And I was like, oh, I don't think I would have done that. But then the guy, then a week later, she came back and the guy had replied and said, wait, no, don't take me off your list. The only reason I wasn't calling you back is because and I was like, maybe it is a good idea to tell them you're booting them off. So you decide if you want to tell them, hey, I can tell I'm bugging you. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm removing you from my select group. Great. If you want to do that, do that. I never did. I just booted them. So
But the biggest thing is number one.
yeah, the key thing is just you gotta stay, if you go back to the open system, this is where you're gonna end up, is you end up doing this, okay? All right, now.
Thanks, Steve Kornacki.
All right, number 4. Number 4 protocol, okay? So our last one is this. When you're calling them, so now Aaron and Chad and Carla, anybody that's been on before, don't answer this question. Let the ones who haven't been here before answer. What am I calling these people for? Okay. What am I hoping to have happen by calling them?
Generate a lead.
That's intuitively, we would think that the purpose of me making the phone call to these guys on a monthly basis
Business.
is to get a deal, right? Now, 6 months from now, if I were to ask you, are you working this system? And you said yes, and I said to you, what is the purpose of us making a phone call? You'll forget what I'm about to say. Like, this has a short shelf life. Have you forgotten already?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do,
Yeah.
I remember now.
Okay, good.
I haven't.
Okay, good. So Chad, Chad? Yeah, no. I don't know why I thought you were Chad for a second there, but what am I calling for?
Exactly what that for is.
Yeah, which is why I did it. And so the purpose of the phone call is to look for the red. The whole purpose of your phone calls to them on a monthly basis is to find who the red ones are. It's not to find a green. We think the reason I'm calling is to try to set an appointment or to get a lead from them. Nope. And this is counterintuitive. But the purpose of your phone call to the people on a monthly basis is to figure out who the red are. Because the red are the one, it is hard to get people to tell you the truth. So you're calling, looking for the red, not the green. And that totally changes the phone call. If you're looking for a green and somebody kind of acts like they're annoyed that you called, you are like, okay, I got to come up with a better value for this person. No. If you're calling looking for red and I call Aubrey and he acts like he's a little put out, I am,
Take you off my list.
yeah, I'm just gonna, all I'm gonna do is go right back to permission. I'm gonna say, hey, Aubrey, are you okay if I keep you in this select group of people?
I don't really care.
It's okay, yeah, so like that's, I kind of got the feeling that maybe you weren't really finding value from it. So would you prefer that I just took you off the list?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if you ever do have a need, there's anything I can help you with, just let me know. But yeah, the last thing I want to do is be bothering you. So I'll just take you off the list. That's great.
Okay, awesome.
So here's the thing. If I'm looking for green, I would never in a million years say that to him. I would hang up hoping that maybe next month will be better. Versus if I'm looking for the red, I'm trying to figure out like, hey, if you're never going to do a deal with me or refer people to me, like I would rather you just tell me. So I sometimes would even be that blunt with people of just saying, hey, if it ever is a problem, just let me know. Because the last thing I want to do is be calling you and bugging you. So just let me know. Now, real quick, if he just told me no, so my number just went from 200 to 199. What do I have to do then?
Add a person.
That's right. So it's just the opposite of what we did here. If somebody lists their house and they move out of state, I got to go add somebody else new. They die, I got to add somebody new. They tell me don't ever call me again, I got to go add somebody. So just keep in mind the fixed in size works both directions. When you go over 200, you got to get it down. If you drop below 200, you got to get it back up. So, okay, you had a question.
Yeah, so, would you initiate that whole, relationship with that question, saying, no? I guess I don't know how to word that way.
Of saying if you ever don't find value in it, you don't want me to
Yeah.
call you, let me know.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know.
I never did.
Okay.
You could. I usually just started it with, hey, I've got a select group of people that, and then you're gonna figure out over time.
Yeah, okay.
So, and part of why I say that is because what I don't want to do is convince them before I've even started that maybe I should I not be in this group?
Yeah.
But now, so how do you know that they're red? Well, one is what we just talked about. But here's the best way to know that somebody is red. If they pop up in your list of people to call today and you hesitate to call them, they're red. Like if you're hesitant to call a person, more than likely it's because they're red. And they might not be red, meaning they might do a deal, but if you're hesitant to call them, get them off your list. You should have only people on the list that when their name pops up, you're actually, and you don't have to actually even be excited to call, but at least you should be like, oh, okay, that's who I'm calling today. That's great. If you look at their name and you're hesitant to call, if you do kind of, ooh, I don't want to call them today, I'll call them tomorrow, they're probably red. And just get rid of them and go replace them with somebody else. Okay. Now, you drive by their house and there's another agent's for sale sign out front, they're probably red. Luckily, that shouldn't happen. Okay. But ultimately, when you call, pay attention to how they're responding to you. And if they seem hesitant at all, give them the opportunity. Don't convince them to be red, but give them the opportunity to be red. Just, hey, Aubrey, are you finding value? Are you okay with me staying in touch with you about this? And if they go, I'm probably never going to move. Hey, that's totally cool. I don't really care about when you move, but if you hear of somebody, would you be willing to refer them to me? I don't know. I wouldn't, like, I had a bad experience with that one time. Okay, no worries. Thanks for telling me. When you're looking for the red and you find one, you should be excited. You should not be disappointed. Be excited, because the faster you can get rid of these people. Here's the thing. If he says, I'm probably never going to refer you to anybody I replace him with is going to be better than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're doing is, so here's real quick. Let me just show you this. Let's say I screwed up. Let's say I added 10 people, not one of them. Oops, wrong color. Not one of them ends up being green. Okay, so I add 10 people, all 10 are red. So I have to subtract 10. I'm right, like you can't screw it up. That's the good thing with this. Like, even if you add 10 people and they're all red, but you got rid of 10 red, you're no worse off than you were. You just keep adding people, and the secret to it is get good at getting rid of the red. The reason you're not calling looking for the green is green will take care of themselves. You don't have to worry about the green. They will take care of themselves. What happens when somebody's green and they either want to sell or buy? What are they going to do? Yeah, that's what's beautiful about this. You don't have to worry about green. They take care of themselves. When they're ready, they just call you up and they'll be like, hey, come out and list my house. Okay. That's why this is so cool, is get good at getting rid of the red. And as the green will take care of themselves. All right. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Russ.
Go ahead.
So at the beginning of the class, you talked about the difference between SOI and prospect. And
Yes.
then we talked about knocking on doors. I have a really bad cold, so I probably sound terrible. But so you knock on someone's door and you ask them, I have a select group of people. Would you like to be put on it? They, oh, sure. So they're a prospect then. They're not, because they're not ready to go now. They didn't set an appointment with them. They haven't chosen me. So they're still a prospect. Would you be putting them in as your SOI?
No, well, sorry, yes, sorry. So let me make sure that I say this and that it answers your question. My primary objective in prospecting is always first to set an appointment. But if I can't get an appointment, then I want to say I've got a select group of people. So if in the event, here's what I would say, in the event that you feel like, hey, this person may be doing something sooner than later, then I'm going to keep working them as a prospect, meaning calling weekly. Versus if I set an appointment, I'm going to try to get them to be the client. But if I know they're not going to be doing something right away, or they don't even have a need at all, like that's the other way to think of it, is right off the bat, I might knock on somebody's door and they may say, I'm never, ever moving. Okay, but if you heard of somebody thinking of buying or selling, who would you refer them to? I don't know. Well, great. I would like to be that person. I've got a select group of people, like to add you to that list. Okay, then they go right into here. Does that answer your question, Carla?
Right. So if you're out for working your prospect list, yes, I get it.
Yep. So people in prospect should stay there for a short time. They're either becoming a client, SOI, or you drop them. All right.
I think I'm gonna do it this time.
Okay, good. Hey, and either way, come back next time. Unless you've gotten to the 60%, then you can be like, I'm good. But I do want to hear though. So like Chad, I know Chad's taking it pretty serious, right? I think, or are you not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you following it exactly?
Sounds pretty serious.
Because you either follow it or you don't.
Yeah.
I have room for improvement, but
Yeah.
it's
Okay,
it's
good.
good.
Well, and so that's the one thing that I would just ask is, as you do it and you see success, I love the
Pass it on.
feedback. Yeah, I love hearing about it because I love being able to talk and say, look, just do it. Because the problem is most people don't do it. So,
And I would say that success looks a lot different for different people, right? With given my, we all want transactions, right? But I think part of my transition was brand identity a little bit, making a career move to this,
gotcha.
Oh, you're in real estate now,
Yeah.
brand, so it takes a little bit longer, but yeah, I've had about half my deals this year are from SOI.
Cool. Good. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks,
Have a
Steve.
great day.
You know who Steve Kornacki is?
No.
Hey, Russ, one more. So are you saying protocol number 4 is just looking for the red?
Yep. Find the red. Find the people in your database that are not going to refer business or do business with you. So I feel like I should know who it is, but
You do.
okay.
So you know the guy that always wears the white shirt and the corduroy pants, and during the elections, he's the guy on I think it's NBC that's always doing all the numbers.
Yeah,
If they do this county,
Yeah.
and he's always
Okay.
that dude.
Yeah.
That's Steve Kornacki.
That was me today. Cool.
You were pushing the numbers, dude.
Awesome.